few moments. Now, there are many synergies between what we're doing in Scotland and the reform programme now underway in Whitehall, but I want to touch on two key differences. One is around scope and one is around mandating. In terms of scope, the UK government's reform programme is focusing initially on central government spending. Local authorities have been told to sort their own act out, but the Cabinet Office has been quite clear that they're not going to get involved, certainly not at this stage. Now in Scotland, that would have very limited impact, because as the eagle-eyed of you may have seen from a couple of slides ago, central government spending in Scotland only accounts for some 16% of our overall spend on goods and services. And the second key difference is mandating. Whereas the UK government's approach is based on a degree of compulsion, the political situation in Scotland, where we have a minority government, at least for the next 6 weeks until the election, where we have a concordat with local authorities that sets out very clearly the relationship of equality and mutual respect, that situation makes it very difficult for the Scottish Government to mandate across the public sector. And so the emphasis north of the border is on shared ownership of the reform programme, because that only works if we're all singing the same tune. And we can partly engineer that through the structures, like the Reform Board, but ultimately it depends on convincing the key decision makers. And the quality of data and the political leadership are key to that. And I can't resist trumpeting a couple of notable successes, in particular our national electricity contract. I was at a conference a month or so ago with public sector bodies in England and Wales, and they described one of their examples of success as being a single electricity contract, but they said, but that'll never happen, it's so complicated. Well, it's happened in Scotland. We've got a contract that covers 98% of the public sector. That's 24,000 buildings, over 180 separate organisations. It's saving £10 million a year, and best of all, it means that 100% of public sector electricity in Scotland comes from renewable sources. We're increasing the skills base, and I can't emphasise enough the importance of having people who know what they're doing, who are sufficiently well placed to make a difference. And the role that SIPS has played in professionalising the procurement function has been absolutely critical over recent years, and I do want to pay a particular tribute, David, to your leadership in making that happen and in putting procurement on the national and the UK-wide and the international stage. In Scotland, we've worked with CIPS to introduce a Scottish procurement competency framework, and that allows purchasing staff to assess their skills and inform their future personal development. And that's being promoted internationally now by the Institute as best practice. At the organisational level too, we're making progress. I've already mentioned the importance of hearts and minds. We have a capability assessment, and public sector bodies have now gone through 2 rounds of procurement capability assessments. The process in Scotland, again, differs from the Whitehall model that OGC used to operate. It's centred around a simple one-page dashboard that shows strengths and weaknesses and how that compares across the sector. It's not a league table, but by goodness, it's wonderful for focusing a local authority chief executive when I say, can I come and talk to you about your capability assessment result and how that compares with your neighbouring authority down the road. Technology. The key elements of our e-commerce strategy. I've already mentioned the information hub. I'll talk in a few moments about Public Contracts Scotland and our plans for a pre-qualification database. But together, these 4 pillars put us at the forefront of electronic trading between government and business. eProcurement Scotland is the e-commerce platform provided by the Scottish Government for the Scottish public sector. It currently transacts about 1/3 of total public sector spend with business That's about £3.5 billion of business in the course of a year. And the transaction costs alone are delivering savings of almost £1 million a year. And it's widely regarded across Europe as one of the most comprehensive examples of a government e-commerce system. It's been made available by the government to the public service as a centrally funded shared service since 2008. It means that frontline staff can easily access collaborative contracts, and importantly, it also allows appropriate controls of spending to be put in place. I'm the Scottish Government's champion for counter-fraud, and that's very important to me. The tender process for renewing EPS is currently underway. We expect to move to the new system at the back end of this year, and we anticipate that will deliver an improved and much more flexible service to a wider range of users and at a far lower overall cost to government and to the taxpayer. Now, I don't want to mislead here, and I did promise Simon that I would try not to be too bullish, and Scotland is no procurement nirvana. We've got a lot of challenges in Scotland and a long way to go in getting to the vision of transformed procurement that John McClellan described. But in the crucial areas of data collection, of collaboration, of increasing skills, of controlling spending, I genuinely believe that Scotland stands comparison with the best. And that's paying off. In the 4 years of the reform programme, we've saved over £800 million through improved procurement. And remember, that's against the tiny Scottish spend of £9 billion a year, not the huge English spend against which the Cabinet Office announced billions of efficiencies on a daily basis. And from government-led collaborative contracts alone, we're anticipating a further £200 million savings over the next 3 years, and overall procurement savings of as much as a further £1 billion. Now, this slide is called the National Purpose, and it was set out by the Scottish Government at the start of the current administration as the focus for everything that the government does. So everything Scottish Government does is focused towards this end of delivering sustainable economic growth. And our recently published Economic Recovery Plan recognises the contribution that procurement plays towards that. Because £9 billion a year, or even the £7 or £8 billion it may be after the cuts have taken place, spent wisely, that's a huge economic lever. And that's a key difference between public sector procurement and private sector procurement. It's not just about the bottom line. And understanding that is central to understanding what we're trying to do in Scotland.